I may proceed. All right. Hi, good Hafide, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Guam Congress Building in Hagatna, and thank you all for being here. My name is Senator Dwayne Nicolas, the Committee on Emergency Response, Border Safety, Military, and Veterans Affairs, and the Mayor's Council of Guam is now called to order. The time is now 9:01. Today is Monday, January 8th. In compliance with the Open Government Law, notices for this public hearing were published in the Guam Daily Post and in the Government of Guam Public Notice portal on Monday, January 1, 2024, and Thursday, January 4, 2024. Notices were also by email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets, and this hearing is being live streamed on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, my esteemed colleague, Minority Leader Frank Blas, who's here with me today and the sponsor of this bill. Today, the committee is holding a public hearing for discussion on Bill number 210-37 Core, sponsored by Frank Blas Jr., an act to add a new subsection 65121 to Chapter 65, Division 3, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, relative to codifying the Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan and requiring annual review and exercise of the plan. Those testifying today, I ask you to please come up and have a seat when called. I would like to begin with stating the rules of this public hearing. During testimony, be respectful and courteous to each other. Personal inferences and to testimonies or senators is not permitted. Failure to abide by this general rule of conduct will be removed from the public hearing room. In addition, a general reminder to please ensure that the microphone is on prior to speaking, and speak into the microphone stating your name and title of the panel before you begin. I'd like to open up with thanking everybody and wishing everybody a happy new year, and hope everybody enjoyed this last festive holiday season. I'd like to acknowledge my esteemed colleague, Minority Leader Frank Blas, to go ahead and open on and give his opening remarks on the bill. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir, and thank you very much. And to those that are here, thank you. Thank you, General Aguigui, for being here. Mr. Chair, Bill 210-37, an act to basically codify the Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan and requiring an annual review and exercise of the plan, came as a result of, first off, a little background, a little history. I served once as the Homeland Security Advisor for Guam, and back, I gotta say, decades ago now, one of the things that we had to put together as a jurisdiction, every state and territory, that was required to provide this under the Department of Homeland Security, was a comprehensive emergency management plan that would basically provide a template and basically a starting point on how to be able to respond to any type of emergency, whether it be natural or man-made. And there were many components, and there continues to be updates, and there should be continuous updates to these components based on the threat levels and the types of threats that your jurisdiction is susceptible to. Obviously, one of the things is I will tell you that back in 2004, 2005, when the first emergency management plan was being drafted, there were many of the threats that exist today that weren't considered back then. And as a result, one of the things that was done is that there was a constant review and a constant check and a constant update of the plan up until a certain point. And I hate to say this, and I'm going to be very blunt. One of the things that we found is with the onset or with the Typhoon Marwar, this was an event, a natural disaster event, that Guam hadn't experienced, and Guam, our island, didn't have to deal with for over two decades, 20 years. You know, the last time that we had to deal with a disaster, a natural disaster of that magnitude here on Guam, was Typhoon Pongsonghua. And granted, after Tata and Pongsonghua, there were many lessons learned, and there were many processes that were put in place. One of the things that the management plan required, or that should have been done, was a regular review of the plan to be able to see whether or not, first off, the response that the plan requires, is it a response that is necessary today, or can it be provided by a separate response or a combination of another response? And there are new threats that exist today that didn't exist back in 2004 and 2005. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was basically take a look at what we had as a comprehensive emergency management plan for Guam. And as of 3 minutes ago, okay, the plan basically still reached 2016. Now, there may have been updates to the plan, but it is not reflective of it, because one of the things that we find in a plan that exists is there should be basically a checklist or notes as to, you know, when it was reviewed, what was changed, you know, what was added. And so what I wanted to provide is then, let's codify this. You know, we're out in the middle of nowhere. First off, it's no great secret, okay? We're out in the middle of nowhere. You know, most responses, emergency responses, don't happen within hours. It happens within days. And within that time period of when we're going to wait for the cavalry to show up, you know, we got to be able to circle the wagons and guard the fort and take care of the people within it. And so what I want is putting together a plan that first off would establish and would mandate that there is a periodic or an annual review of this plan. And in any portion of this plan, exercise the plan. You know, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't always have to be a typhoon. It could be a plan of what do we do when the phones go out, like this morning, okay? And one of the things we found this morning is when we woke up, many of us who are with a certain carrier had no access. How then do we deal with that, okay? And it's those simple things that I want to be able to put into place so that when we do get hit with a disaster, and I'm not to say that I'm not, you know, the experts and the individuals that are there right now can't handle it. But life goes on without us, after us, okay? And I want to make sure that the next person that sits in those two seats that are in front of me if they didn't have as much knowledge as they did, that you have today, there was at least a plan that they could follow, okay? So that is what this bill is for, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, first off, that you're having this hearing to be able to move this forward. And I look forward to the responses, and I look forward to the testimony that's going to be provided. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Thank you, sir. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues, Senator Joanne Brown and Senator Tello Tairigui here, who have just joined us. Thank you, ma'am, for coming. And also, I'd like to acknowledge our first and only panel, Mr. Charles Estevis from the Office of Homeland Security, Guam office, and General Aggie also. Welcome, and you can go ahead and start with your testimony. We'll go ahead and start with you, madam.
Hafade and good morning, Senators Nicolas and esteemed senators who are present here today. My name is Esther Aguigui, and I am currently the Homeland Security Advisor. I took the seat of the position on June 3rd of last year, and this job started with a phone call and might end with a phone call, so I'm so delighted and privileged to be here today to offer both written and oral testimony. So my comments today will be captured on the website that was provided on your news release. Senators, to manage a crisis effectively, it is important to recognize the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous elements of a situation and develop strategies that are flexible, adaptable, and responsive to change. Volatility refers to the speed and magnitude of change which can be difficult to predict and manage. Uncertainty refers to the lack of clarity and predictability in a situation, which can make it challenging to make informed decisions. Complexity refers to the interconnectedness of different factors of the difficulty of understanding how they interact with each other. Ambiguity refers to the lack of clarity and the existence of multiple interpretations of a situation. In the context of crisis management, understanding these elements can help leaders anticipate and prepare for the unexpected and respond effectively to build resilience, develop and revise contingency plans, and foster a culture of innovation and learning. Thus, it is in this context that I strongly oppose Bill 210, which aims to codify the Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. Emergency management is inherently dynamic, requiring flexibility to adapt to evolving changes. Codifying the plan may hinder timely revisions essential for effective response strategies. One particular concern lies in subsection C of Section 2, demanding that the Guam Homeland Security and Office of Civil Defense submit a detailed report on exercise shortfalls and response gaps. Requiring legislative action based on these recommendations could impede swift responses to immediate threats, jeopardizing security. Furthermore, the ambiguity arising from the bill's language, particularly in the last paragraph of Section 2, indicates an intention to codify the GCAMP and necessitate legislative action for revision. This poses a potential obstacle to the plan's adaptability, as waiting for legislative procedures may hinder timely adjustments in emergency management strategies. Moreover, the GCAMP designates the governor as the sole decision maker in policy matters. By potentially requiring legislative approval for revisions, Bill 210 undermines the efficient and centralized decision-making structure outlined in the GCAMP, possibly impeding the effectiveness of emergency response efforts. May I suggest some general ways that the Guam legislature can help the Guam Homeland Security and Office of Civil Defense manage emergencies? Number one, provide funding. The Guam legislature can allocate funds to the Guam Homeland Security and Office of Civil Defense to help it prepare for and respond to emergencies. This can include funding for training, equipment, hazardous and overtime pay, and other resources. Guam's top-notch emergency support function representatives, comprised of the dedicated men and women from various agencies, possess the expertise and institutional knowledge essential for effectively preparing for and responding to emergencies. Providing adequate resources as compensation reflects our gratitude for their service and underscores the value we place on their subject matter expertise. 2, support public education campaigns. The Guam legislature can support public education campaigns to raise awareness about emergency preparedness and response. This can include campaigns to encourage residents to create emergency kits, develop evacuation plans, and stay informed during emergencies. 3, collaborate with other agencies. The Guam legislature, together with our partners, can work with other agencies to develop coordinated emergency response plans. This can include working with local hospitals, emergency responders, and other organizations to ensure that resources are used effectively during emergencies. Number 4, encourage community involvement. The Guam legislature can encourage community involvement in emergency preparedness and response. This can include working with community organizations to develop emergency plans and encouraging residents to participate in emergency response training. In conclusion, while acknowledging the importance of reviewing and updating emergency plans to address various hazards, it is crucial to approach the Guam legislative proposal with careful consideration. The comprehensive evaluation of response strategies to natural disasters, terrorist activities, cyber threats, and other emergencies should be conducted judiciously, taking into account potential implications and ensuring that the proposed codification aligns seamlessly with evolving needs and circumstances. Striking a balance between flexibility and specificity in the legislative framework will be a pivotal in safeguarding Guam's preparedness and resilience in the face of diverse challenges. Thank you, esteemed senators, for the invaluable opportunity to present both oral and written testimony here today. Your attention to this matter and consideration are greatly appreciated as we collectively strive for informed decision-making.
Thank you, Madam. One moment. I know Mr. Estevis wants to, he's excited to give his testimony, but we're going to take a moment to reset the mic. So just a moment. Thank you. All right, we're back. Mr. Estevis, go ahead and please state your name, sir, and go ahead and begin.
Hafaday, my name is Charles Estevis. I'm the Administrator of the Office of Civil Defense. First of all, I want to say good morning to Senator Nicolas, Senator Bloss, Senator Brown, and Senator Aguigui. I thank you very much for allowing me to come and present in front of this committee today. As I stated, my name is Charles Estevis. I am testifying against Bill 210-37, and not because of what the bill aims to do, but just because of some of the specific language within the bill. And I believe through collaborative partnership that we can, better come up with policies to move forward the emergency management enterprise. So the bill, ambitious in its scope, seeks to bring about significant changes, but not without its share of complexities and challenges. Firstly, a major concern arises regarding the scope of regulatory authority. The current legal framework directly governs the Office of Civil Defense, as outlined in Title 10, Chapter 65 of Guam Code annotated, while Title 5 covers the Office of Homeland Security. Bill 210-37 does blur these lines, referencing both agencies interchangeably as if they're one. This conflation could lead to a tangled web of regulatory and operational inefficiencies, potentially muddling the clear-cut roles and responsibilities that should ideally promote synergy in emergency management and homeland security. Next comes the critical issue of funding and grant compliance. Guam's emergency management relies entirely on grants, a lifeline that dictates adherence to specific requirements. The Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan under Bill 210-37 must align with these stringent funding stipulations, covering priorities, capabilities, and areas of focus. The sustainability of emergency management efforts thus hangs in the balance, contingent on the ebb and flow of grant funding structures and amounts. Which means if we were to lose grant funding tomorrow, we want to ensure that this bill will be, if passed, would be able to be enforced in perpetuity. The feasibility of implementing Bill 210-37 also comes under scrutiny. The island's dependency on grants implies inherent resource limitations, which could hamstring the ambitious goals of conducting annual reviews and exercises mandated by the bill. This requirement, while theoretically sound, risks imposing a significant administrative burden, potentially straining the already limited resources and necessitating a reevaluation of management practices. Furthermore, there's a concern about the bill inadvertently stifling the evolution of future emergency management plans. The rigid adherence to law, particularly by those of a Madisonian perspective and strict constructionist view of public administration, might limit future planners to the framework explicitly stated in the legislation. Such a scenario could hinder innovation and adaptability in the ever-changing landscape of emergency management. Lastly, specific issues with the bill's language raises red flags. References to Guam Homeland Security and the Office of Civil Defense as a single agency recur throughout the document, causing potential confusion. The bill's treatment of the Incident Command System fails to acknowledge its non-interchangeability with other systems like the Hospital Incident Command System and Public Health Incident Command System. Moreover, the use of the term Emergency Support Function Team contradicts the terminology of the current National Response Framework, which employs ESFs to describe specific functions or areas of responsibility, not teams. The bill also falls short in specificity regarding continuity of government and continuity of operations plans, which should be localized and maintained by each government agency. So we understand that decisions that we make today will shape Guam's resiliency and preparedness for years to come. So Bill 210-37 stands at the crossroads, embodying both the potential for significant advancement in emergency management and the risks that come with oversights and ambiguities. I do wholeheartedly support a collaborative partnership where we develop sound policies to better prevent, protect, mitigate, respond, and recover from threats and hazards. I just ask that we do not fall into any potential, illogical type of thinking traps, such as we must either pass Bill 210-37 or accept that we don't care about the safety of people, where we have only two extreme options to choose from, where ignoring other potential solutions or middle ground approaches. I do ask that we don't make the hasty generalization that since there are perceptions on how Mauar was managed, whether it was managed poorly or effectively, that all future disasters will be managed the same without Bill 210-37, where we draw a general conclusion from a single event, overlooking the variability and complexity of emergency scenarios. I do ask that we don't fall under the bandwagon where other states and territories may have current legislation which requires their jurisdictions to regularly update their plan and exercise their plan. I can say that we do regularly update our plan, and while 2016 is the date on the plan, that's the date of promulgation. And as Senator Blas pointed out, yes, we do have, if it's not in the plan right now, the list of changes, and that's something that we can talk about and definitely need to make, to ensure, to basically reassure everyone that the plan is updated regularly. And the plan is also exercised regularly in accordance with the Homeland Security Evaluation Exercise Program. Once again, I want to thank the body for allowing us to testify today. And as I stated, I do support a collaborative partnership in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Estevis. I just wanted to ask, you pointed something out very interesting to me, and I think maybe the director can also answer this maybe. So 100% of Homeland Security, Guam Homeland Security is funded federally by grants?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have, the primary grants we have comes under the, both the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency non-disaster grant program. And so that is the Homeland Security Grant Program, which funds the Homeland Security grant activities. And then we have the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which covers the emergency management side. And so with that said, although both grants are under DHS, FEMA Region 9 handles the emergency management side of it, where DHS headquarters handles the Homeland Security side. Additionally, we do have a cybersecurity grant program as well, specifically for the cybersecurity and critical infrastructure protection.
In that building, do you guys also house federal agencies there?
So we house what's called the FEMA integration team. And so they're basically two emergency management specialists that come out of Region 9. Okay. And so they're called the FIT. And
so you guys collaboratively work together to keep the island safe somehow?
Yeah, we do.
How does that work?
Yeah, so it's, when we talk about plans, the Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan is just one of the several plans in the family of plans and the plans inventory. The other is called the Guam Hazard Mitigation Plan. And if you read it, it's a very comprehensive document. It's about several hundred pages long and basically describes all the threats and hazards and also gives proposals on how to mitigate against future types of threats and hazards. It has projects in there, current projects and proposed projects, such as the undergrounding of power lines, as an example. The upgrading of water systems and networks. Additionally, the plan specific for a Category 4 and Category 5 type of typhoon is called the Guam Catastrophic Plan, and it's separate from the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. Now that plan was a collaborative effort between us and FEMA Region 9, and it is an actual annex to FEMA's All Hazards Plan.
I've been so curious about, because of the recent developments in Japan with the earthquake and the tsunamis. I wonder, maybe you can run through something real quickly with me, a scenario with perhaps a tsunami were to happen, if you know that off the top of your head. What would happen in case we had that type of disaster?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because just watching all the news reports from Japan and also a lot of TikTok shorts. If you notice, there's something that they have that we didn't have, and that was wireless emergency alerts. And so if you notice in some of those shorts, they received, alerts, audible tone, visual text prior to the actual event occurring. We don't have that in Guam. The reason why we don't have that in Guam is because it requires current communication carriers to upgrade their systems, something that we currently cannot enforce or force them to do and upgrade. There's one time we all came to a table. This was when we had the ballistic missile threat, I believe back in 2018, 2017. The year is all kind of, but we brought them all to a table and asked them if they would consider, buying into wireless emergency alerts, and they basically asked us if we could pay for it. But given limitations on our grant funding and the amount, we couldn't do it at the time. If you look at a lot of the carriers in the States, all the big name carriers, that's all the infrastructure upgrades, that's all paid for by the carrier themselves. I mean, if you want to talk about policy, I say as a condition of doing business as a telecommunication carrier, that they, one, have wireless emergency alerts, two, be very transparent in how they report out post-event, in terms of outages and the timeline to get back up. And only because when you look at telecommunication carriers today, they're a utility. And in many states, in terms of census, they're regarded as a utility.
So a great deal of our response and the success of our response also relies heavily on our private partners to make sure that they're helping us out during a time of a disaster.
Yeah, I wholeheartely agree. And that's why as part of our Kemp update, especially post-Mawar, is to have a new emergency support function, and that's going to be on the private sector. We've had a lot of interest from the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association to kind of revive this emergency support function, which covers both, to actually have someone from a private sector representative inside the Emergency Operations Center. Because one of the shortfalls that we had during Mawar was the ability to procure goods and services, especially considering the day that the event fell, or the incident happened, going into the weekend, and then businesses going to reassess, whether or not they can open shop back up.
Just sticking with the tsunami scenario, so we do have a disaster response scenario that how often, if you do have one, how often do you revisit it and try to update it or try to make sure that it remains viable in a future scenario?
Yeah, so we do have an annual exercise, and it's a heavy weather event exercise because that's our most predominant threat in Guam. Whether it's a full-scale exercise, a tabletop, or a workshop is really dependent on as I stated before, the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program. And this is something that we're tied to as a condition of these grants funds we receive. For tsunami, we have a separate grant program for that actually falls under NOAA, and that's the National Tsunami Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So that doesn't fall under DHS or FEMA, and that's with that they do tsunami modeling and also exercising of response as well. A lot of the literature and the tsunami wills you got were all funded from that program. We're paying for research for past several years to develop new tsunami modeling in partnership with University of Hawaii.
All right, thank you for that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questioning by our panel. We'll go ahead and start with our minority leaders. Senator Frank Blas, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Advisor Aguigui and Mr. Estevis. Thank you very much for basically providing testimony for every reason why we should have this bill. Okay? You know, while you basically says that your written testimony, you oppose it, everything you said speaks to why the bill, why it should become law. And I want to thank you for that. Okay? So let me just go down a little bit. Okay, I made a lot of points here. First off, you say that you have two primary grants that run Office of Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense and Guam Homeland Security. So one of them is the HSGP, right? Homeland Security Grant Program. The other one's EMPG, Emergency Management Grant Program. How much do you get for each program annually?
Senator, it depends on what the individual grant is.
No, your overall.
Yeah, so just let you know that each of the grants is a percentage of the total appropriation each year, right?
So your average
Congressional
is going to be
appropriation. So $1 million for the Homeland Security program on average, right? And about $980,000 for the Emergency Management Performance Grant.
Okay.
And so that's 0.08 and 0.04 of the total appropriation for those grants.
Okay. And under those grant programs, how many people do you employ per program?
I can tell you that it changes. I don't have the staffing pattern on the top of my head, but I can tell you that everyone that we do have employed is a combination of different grants. We have had significant turnover since I came back, prior to me coming back and prior to the Homeland Security Advisor coming on board in June. But if you want to talk about classified employees, which...
No, I just want to know total employees that you pay for by each grant.
Yeah, I could tell you that on the 50-50 on the Emergency Management Performance Grant Program, or 100% is myself. We have two civil defense coordinators, two civil defense officers, one public information officer, one program coordinator, 4. And I can tell you that the way they're funded now is going to change in 2023. So I can't tell you the number per grant, but because you're going to have inflated numbers right now. But the number of classified employees that we have is 8 classified employees.
For which grant program?
Both grants combined.
Both grants.
Yeah, so because some of them support, for example, our public information officer is a classified employee, and she's paid 50-50 out of both grants.
Okay.
The 4 in the civil defense, 2 civil defense coordinators, civil defense officers, are paid 100% out of the emergency management performance grant.
Okay.
Before we had 3 classified planners, now we have 0 classified planners.
Okay. How many people do you have? Let me make this more simple. How many people are in that building right now?
Right now with the Fusion Center,
Absent the Fusion Center.
National Dislocated Worker Grant Program, about 14 employees.
You have 14 employees.
Yeah.
Okay. And all have different functions based on what your programs require.
Yes.
And you say you used to have 3 planners, but you don't have 3 planners anymore.
Correct.
Who's taking over for those positions?
So we've assigned a civil defense officer to be the planning section chief.
So there are basically planners then that are there. They just don't hold the official position, but they're there. Yeah. Okay. And so in your emergency management grant program and your Homeland Security grant program, obviously they require plans, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And your Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan is but one of many plans that you should have, but probably one of the more larger ones, if you will, right? Do these grant programs require a periodic or an annual review of the plans?
Non-annual review, but a periodic review.
Periodic review, as in every grant period?
No,
Are you sure that not every grant period?
I'm sure.
Okay. Okay, so when you say periodic, what do you mean by periodic?
So it's not required, but we put it as a work plan. We put it as a work plan.
Oh, yeah. I
When we
know.
write the plan. So although the grantors are not requiring it, because they do have their specific requirements on what we should focus on, whether that be logistics and distribution management one year, whether that be focused on port resiliency another year. So what we're trying to say is that the requirements change all the time, and you're very aware of this, which means that, and you talked about what's going to happen after us, right? After we leave. So if, future Homeland Security Advisor and administrator and planners, if they don't put it inside the actual grant application, then, it's not going to get done, right? But at the same time, if it is in the grant application, and if the grantor does not approve it, then it's also not going to get done. And that's the problem with being a 100% grant-funded agency, is that, we have to follow, the stipulations set forward by the grants and whatever the priorities are for the grantor at the time, which I can tell you has changed significantly over the past several years since I've been in that office.
So I'm a little confused here based on what you had just said and how you testified. How does this bill then become an impediment, or how does this bill not support everything that you want to be able to do?
What I'm worried about is ensuring the bill can be enforced in perpetuity.
Okay, so let me talk about that one first. When you go out publicly, how do you identify your agency as? Don't you guys identify Office of Homeland Security, Guam Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense?
I address myself as the Office of Civil Defense.
Yeah, but when you go out to the public, when you put out your advertisement, don't you say Guam Homeland Security, Office of Civil
The
Defense?
Offices of Homeland Security and Civil Defense.
Yes, so you
Two offices.
You've done that, right?
The Offices of Homeland Security and Civil Defense, yes.
Okay, so you've been able to, so you were able to do this. I mean, that's how you were
Yeah,
able
two
to.
offices.
Yeah.
One mission.
But then when you come out jointly, which is basically because you said you got 50% or a lot of your positions are funded half and half.
Correct.
EMPG, HSGP,
Correct.
right? So you've already melded Office of Homeland Security, Guam Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense in that respect, haven't you?
Yeah, in terms of two offices, one mission, yes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is 2 offices, 1 mission, but the way you basically put it out is Guam Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense, right?
Yeah, the Offices of
And that's why
Homeland-
it's identified this way.
Yeah, and Senator, I just want to say like I said, it's just the specific technicalities in the language
I know.
that, Title V versus Title X.
But it's nothing that would basically just nullify the existence of the bill, would it? Is it?
Yeah.
Not so. One of the things that I found is that you say that, you're causing that the ultimate authority, for emergency management or disasters is the governor. And guess what? We all know that, even in this branch. When you say that you're going to try to dilute that by putting the legislative in, let me read you the section here. Okay? It's on the second to last paragraph of section 2, or the last paragraph of section 2, the last sentence. The report shall include the hazard and type of exercise conducted, the shortfalls and response gaps identified through the exercise, the steps taken to mitigate the shortfalls and gaps, and recommendation for executive and legislative action. This body's not going to take any action until you guys recommend it. So how do you say that we forced ourselves into it? We didn't force ourselves into this. What we're doing is saying, if you need help, if you need a legislative action, then provide us with the information. Don't let us look at what the responses are out there and then come back in here and decide on our own how the responses should be. This does not say that we're diluting the governor's power. What this is saying is that if you need help and you need legislative help, then come to us. So I want to dispel that. Secondly, with regards to a lot of your recommendations, provide funding. When's the last time you guys came in here and asked us for funding?
Yeah, so we submit, we are in office within the office of the governor.
Understood. Yeah. So when's the last time you came in and asked us for funding? Okay. You know, we just don't have, we will not act unless you ask us to, especially in this area. We know our boundaries. And if in the boundaries you can do these things well, we'll stay out of it. So when you say first off, provide funding, you've never been in here to ask for funding, other than for funding to deal with the disasters, but that's by mandate. And that's because you asked for it. Okay? Secondly, support public education campaigns. Third, collaborate with other agencies. And fourth, encourage community involvement. Well, you know what? Let me go through, this is in your Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan debate. The last time it was basically formally, something was done with it formally was in December 2016. Let me read to you what your responsibilities are based on what your report says, your plan says. 1, advising the governor, lieutenant governor, disaster threat conditions, obtaining and submitting reports on proposed actions, projects in progress, completed projects, and other information pertinent before, during, and after an emergency disaster. 2, representing the governor as the GAR and the TCO when a presidential disaster declaration has been granted. 3, coordinating preparedness activities with government of Guam agencies, private and volunteer, and non-governmental organizations as well as the public. 4, establishing, managing, and maintaining the Marianas Regional Fusion Center for the collection and processing of all threat information relative to Guam and its interests throughout the Pacific region. 5, preparing a Guam Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan that contains provisions to ensure that Guam is prepared for emergencies and disasters. The Guam CEMP and the execution of its prescribed activities must also be consistent with the National Incident Management System. 6, implementing training programs to improve the ability of Guam's emergency management personnel and EOC, ESF teams, team representatives to prepare and implement emergency management plans and programs. This shall include a continuous training program for agencies and individuals that will be called upon to perform key roles into territorial post-disaster response and recovery efforts. 7, establishing guidelines and schedules for annual and periodic exercises that evaluate the ability of Guam to respond to emergencies, disasters, and to support local emergency management agencies. 8, conducting periodic reviews of policy plans, programs, and projects related to emergency disaster response to ensure compliance and consistency and cooperation among elements and functions of preparedness, and shall submit a report to the Office of the Governor identifying conflicts and deficiencies, and shall include, where necessary, recommendations for corrective actions. 9, assigning lead and support responsibilities to Government of Guam agencies as well as public and private organizations for emergency support functions and the other activities needed to support the EOC ESF teams. 10, maintaining a preparedness level that meets the needs of persons with special needs or access to functional needs, and developing policies that are consistent with federal policy and guidelines as they relate to Americans with Disabilities Acts and other civil rights laws. 11, as required, maintaining 24 hours, 7 days a week, situational awareness of events that may require response during normal routine operations. Coordinate situational awareness information with territorial and federal partners. Example, the Pacific Area Command Joint Operations Center, Joint Region Marianas Regional Operations Center, FEMA Region 9 Watch and Public Affairs Officer, Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Homeland Security, etc. 12, maintaining a system of communication and warnings to ensure that Guam's population and emergency response agencies are warned of developing emergency situations and can exchange emergency-related information and decisions. 13, managing and maintaining the incident management system for use in establishing a common operating picture for incident or disaster. This system will ensure central situational awareness and information sharing portal for all Guam departments and partners, EOC, ESF team activations. 14, coordinating the release of public information in concert with the Governor of Guam's Communications Director and/or until activation of the Joint Information Center. 15, providing standards and requirements for village emergency management plans. The standards and requirements must ensure that village plans are coordinated, consistent with the Guam Emergency Management Plan. Actually, I can continue going on because there are about 30 different things that you and your plan says is going to happen. You know, it's very interesting because on September 11, what I did was I put out a Freedom of Information Act request to all agencies, all government entities, and all within on Guam. And I asked them for 4 basic things. 1, where are you currently located? Where are you operating out of? 2, what are your critical assets? 3, what plans do you have in case your facility is deemed unoccupiable or you can't go back into it? Where are you going to operate out of? 4, what kind of equipment do you need? You know, it's kind of interesting. It was basic emergency management plans that, according to your plan, it should have been done periodic and annually. And after this hearing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide to you what the responses are. Half the government agencies, more than half the government agencies, didn't even realize they had a plan. The last time they saw a plan was in 2012. And in some of the agencies, their call tree as to who is going to be taking in charge of their operations should something happen contained individuals that have either retired, have left the agency, or are dead. And they're still on the plan. Hence, you see the need for this? All this is saying is that we're going to put the feet to the fire to the emergency management folks. The people that we're going to rely on should something happen. But the people that we relied on when something did happen. And make sure that there are plans that are in place that are constantly reviewed. Now, please don't tell me that you don't have the personnel to be able to conduct any of this, because your plans, your programs fund exactly those positions. You're forgetting where I came from. So again, I appreciate your testimony, because your testimony validated the need and the existence of this bill to become law. And Mr. Estevis and Advisor Aguigui, take no offense to this, because you see, the thing is, I know your backgrounds, I know your emergency backgrounds, I know where you come from. Think of it as in the future, that henceforth, you know what I was hoping that was going to happen, but it didn't happen with you guys? I took a shot across the bow on September 11. I let everybody know what I was looking for. Did you guys even jump to look into what we were doing? I would have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Senator Frank Blas, our minority leader. I would like to recognize our one of our esteemed colleague here, Senator Canato, for joining us. We're going to move on with questions by Senator Joanne Brown, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly welcome to our personnel that are here and the head of Homeland. I do understand Senator Frank's frustration, and I think it's one of those moments of evaluation, and I certainly also understand the need you have for flexibility, because certainly plans need to be upgraded as time goes on and different experiences happen, and certainly as more information becomes available, because we live in a very changing world. Our biggest threats aren't just typhoons and earthquakes anymore that we have to worry about. But I have to concur with Senator Frank's concern. You know, I don't know if that's the advantage of age and experience, but when you've gone through this and you've worked it, and now we're at the other end looking at the performance of others that have come behind us, where you see deficiencies, it's glaring because you've walked that walk. And certainly, Malwar was, you know, a typhoon that we had after almost 20 years. And certainly there's a lot of new people in place that have not experienced what it's like to respond to a disaster. We can go through all the scenarios and planning and preparation and training, but when you get right down to it and you actually go through it, that's a different dynamic. Unlike the 90s, where there were, goodness, between Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, there was like 3 or 4 typhoons. I knew what it was like to be at Guam EPA, and we were just operating on a little generator to test water quality, and yet go out in the field, and as soon as we thought we were recovering, we got hit with another typhoon. So I think that's really the crux of the issue. I mean, there, Mr. Chair, might be more work that needs to be collectively discussed. I'm inclined to think that Senator Frank's bill would probably get the support it needs to pass just because of our observations. It was not a stellar moment for Homeland from the public perspective, and even ours that were on the outside observing the timeline and the responsiveness, or the lack of, or the delay in responsiveness to addressing recovery and outreach to the community. And some may argue, well, you know, when you're in it and you're doing it, we're busy and we're performing, and yet the public doesn't think that we're doing that. Maybe they don't see what we're doing. But it might have been a communications issue at the end of the day, but truly, the timelines to respond and engage for those of us on the outside was not what we expected. We expected better. We expected faster. Only because we've been through it ourselves. I mean, we've walked the walk that you guys are walking right now. And that's primarily why those concerns were raised. And the criticism, while some say, oh, you know, you're just criticizing, I think it's a time to go back and reevaluate and see how can we improve more. Where, as you guys go back and do your hot wash and determine where in those areas there were deficiencies, how do you do a better outreach to the community so that they know they can depend on you? Because, you know, when you have our mayor, you know, the president of the Mayor's Council come down and literally rant and rave to us for like a half hour about how inefficient this government was and how this administration was in responding to the typhoon, what does that say? And normally the mayors are engaged. Normally they're at the table, you know, when these prior, and I heard that meetings did happen prior. Some say, well, they didn't relay that there were meetings going through, and there were those that says, no, we got it covered. We're prepared, only to find out when the time came that perhaps we were not as prepared. So those frustrations are legitimate. I mean, if that's what our people are feeling, it doesn't matter how you guys interpret on your end whether you're performing or not. If the public doesn't believe you're performing and they don't believe you're performing in a timely manner, that's what you're going to get. That's the criticism that you're going to get. You guys have far more resources than we did. We sat at plastic tables and metal folding chairs up at the governor's office, government house. That's what we had to work with back in the day, and our radios and our limited resources. You guys got all the fancy stuff. But again, you know, the delivery, the service, and the leadership and direction that's there. I know, Esther, you're just taking over now since that typhoon, but we know there were personnel changes as a result of it. It's not a shining moment, but I hope moving forward that we can improve upon it, because I think that, like I said, the odds are fairly good this bill's going to pass. So probably between now and then, Mr. Chair, perhaps your staff and Senator Frank and Homeland can work on language that will give them the flexibility that they need, but at the end of the day, have the public accountability that I think we expect and the responses that our community needs to ensure that their office is working as it should be. So I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair, but thank you very much for allowing me to have the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Madam. Senator Brown, we'll go ahead and Senator Tello, please, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues, and most especially good morning to you, Esther and Charles. Thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come down and testify on this bill. It is an important bill. You know, I think we've watched what happened during COVID. We watched what happened during a typhoon. You know, knock on wood, we're done with all these disasters that are coming our way, and give us a little break on Guam. In the meantime, during that break, I think it's very important that we provide these plans in place. And I can't believe or fathom that, you know, and I've been in 2 administrations prior, that none of these, you know, in Section 2 has ever been followed through with, or that you don't go out and have agencies that come to your office to discuss a plan in the event of certain emergencies. So I do know on your staffing pattern, when it comes to, I guess it's Esther's role as the Homeland Security Advisor, that you do have agencies that you get together with, whether they're autonomous or semi-autonomous or under the governor's office. Do you still meet with them on a regular basis to discuss these certain plans on what to do currently? In case of an emergency, that is. Sorry.
Good morning, Senator, and thank you for that question. Periodically, we do meet there, like my colleague Charles explained. Every now and then we have exercises. One exercise that's coming up is our national level exercise, and that's a FEMA-sponsored event where a lot of our partners, both federal and local, come together and we talk about possible scenarios. That's just one example of the types of partnership and collaborations that we execute as needed and as we are allowed. And then throughout the year, there are other exercises and tabletop events that we also engage in to just ensure we don't get, that our wheels don't need too much oil when we need to move forward.
And all these exercises that you have and meetings that you have with regulatory agencies, are they all funded federally?
No, ma'am.
So how do you pay for these certain exercises or meetings or tabletops? Because I know you sometimes go to Dusitani and have your meetings there, you know, bringing all the agencies together. So can you explain how funding is provided?
So, ma'am, I misspoke. Yes, they are federally funded. I was thinking that you were asking if, like, our state partners or government of Guam agencies are federally funded. But the exercises are always federally funded.
Okay.
You know, and they're part of the plan.
So my next question, if this bill were to pass, you know, I don't want anything to jeopardize any federal funding whatsoever, because once you put something in law, the federal government says, okay, you know, it's in law, then you need to fund it. Do we stand on losing any federal funds because we put this into legislation, into law, if it should pass into law, that is?
Yes, Senator, and quite often, anytime we have changes to plans, to grants that have already been approved, we have to seek the grantor's permission to change those plans, which is what Mr. Estevis was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, but the question is, could we lose federal funding?
Yeah,
Because this is now law that's required.
So it's not a matter of losing federal funding, is if we have any stipulations that the grantors may not necessarily agree with, only because, as I stated earlier, we have to follow what's listed specifically in the grant, right? Mm-hmm. And if this year they tell us that, you know, they want to exercise, you know, all catastrophic plans, then that's what we're going to exercise, is the catastrophic plans.
Mm-hmm. So there's nothing, Charles, stopping, if this bill should become into law, then based on funds available, if the language is in here based on funds available, that you can actually seek out assistance through the federal government for this plan to go in action, because it says it needs 2 employees to cover this. I'm sure you read the fiscal note that was attached to the bill and how they explain how much money this is going to cost. Do you see an issue with the federal government not wanting to put something like this into play?
I mean, like I said, that's a discussion we would have with our grantors, if the bill should pass.
Okay,
And
well,
it's not-
no, I think you should have this discussion before the bill, maybe today or tomorrow,
Yeah.
get a hold of somebody and let us know.
Yeah, and it's not a matter of losing the funding, it's a matter of whether it's eligible or ineligible cost.
Right, to be able to use. But, there's also quite a bit of money out there too, in different grant opportunities that you can look at that maybe not be in this line that you've been working on, but this is something new. So I know that the infrastructure bipartisan has quite a bit of funding under there. It's $150 million that was already given to us. That's already done, but there's also almost $1 billion. But it's competitive, like most things, and I'm hoping that you can look at some way to find funding for this, because I think it's important. The one comment you made, Charles, is you mentioned that other jurisdictions, to not look at other jurisdictions, because even though they have a plan, I mean, why do they get a plan and we wouldn't have a plan like this? Is that what you meant, or can you just elaborate what you said on other jurisdictions have this? But
And more so, I don't know the legislation on other jurisdictions, whether or not it's been effective to have a mandatory review of their plans. Should it be more? Should it be less? Have they had any issues with being required to do something versus something that they've already regularly doing? So I don't know basically the effectiveness the legislation will have afterwards, is what I'm trying to say.
okay. Okay. Well, I know things sometimes get passed based on trial and error, I mean, if it's an effort that needs to be made, that's the first step, in trying to address issues that we have, an effort. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But, we definitely have to try something, that's going to bring more, security for our community, knowing that the government of Guam has their back, in any kind of disaster coming in. The dynamics have changed, though, from, 19 Forgotten to today. You're looking at more disasters in cybersecurity than you are in infrastructure, as we build Guam to sustain, high winds for typhoon, for an example. As we prepare for any kind of pandemic that comes in, we've learned from that. But the one thing I'm very concerned about is cybersecurity, and the hacking, and what exactly the disasters that can happen from us going down. We had a little taste of it with Docomo, when they went down. We had a taste of it when, the threat of in our hospital, UOG, Reverend Tax with information. And that Esther, I want to feel a little more comforted to know, I know you're working on it, but can you give us a little snippet of what you're doing to ensure that our community, in the case there's a cyber attack on this island, which I was told by, experts in the field of, attack or military, military attack on areas, that Guam would probably be attacked cyberly more than anything else. So can you kind of give us a little bit of a security on what Homeland Security is doing as far as keeping our island safe on that, and what would happen in the event if, cyberly we get,
Absolutely, ma'am. So, President Eisenhower once said, no plan survives its first contact, which literally transfers to plans should be living documents as the environment changes. And you mentioned earlier, not only do we have to worry about typhoons and missiles, now we have to worry about a cyber attack. And on top of that, now this phenomenon called artificial intelligence, which is beginning to be darker and darker and darker. So the newly approved island-wide cybersecurity plan was reviewed and sanctioned by the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, which is where our grant came from. And part of the plan the overarching themes of our initial plan would be to accomplish three things. It would be to build a workforce to address our cybersecurity platform. And I think everyone in this room, I hope everyone in this room agrees with me that we, as the whole of government, we simply just do not have the IT platform to accomplish the goals and objectives that are necessary to prevent, mitigate a cyber attack should we have an island-wide. So that plan capitalizes on first building the workforce, identifying the proper agencies, the proper enterprise to address cybersecurity. So in an all hazards picture, cybersecurity is going to require a different kind of first responder. And we just don't have that database, we just don't have that foundation of those type of first responders. So the first thing to do, like cyber hygiene, is let's build the workforce. And the second plan of that cybersecurity plan is to train the workforce. And once we identify the people to address cyber attacks, then let's provide the necessary training, the resources to build that. And then once we have the workforce and the workforce is trained, let's sustain the workforce. And we do that, ladies and gentlemen, senators, by providing the compensation that is expected from IT professionals. We lose a lot of our good workers to other companies who offer them more money, and they jump in a heartbeat. After we've trained them for a certain period of time, if they're offered a job basically doing the same things with a lot more money involved, probably with a lot more fringe benefits, the likeliness of that person leaving is very high. So our island-wide cybersecurity plan focuses on those three elements of that umbrella. And then once we get that foundation, and then what we do is we work with all the government of Guam agencies so that they can tell us what is their plan to address their unique needs at their agencies. We are in constant collaboration with Guam Power Authority, Guam Water Authority, with our federal partners, with CISA, with FEMA, to work on a whole-of-government approach on how to address cybersecurity attacks, incidents. And maybe your plan might work for us, or maybe you can learn something from our plan. So the whole concept of the island-wide cybersecurity plan initially is to establish that foundation. And then once we're strong with that foundation, just like anything else, then we can build back better and stronger. I hope I've answered your question, Senator.
Yeah, you did, but it unfortunately, it's still kind of scary because, we still don't have a plan for that. Anyone can hit us right now. The only thing, I'm glad you mentioned that you're still with the utilities, and visiting them currently right now, but I just hope that there's a manual mechanism that can go into place when you're offline. When everything is offline, that it doesn't stop, like the hospital, for instance. If it goes offline, because many of those are all done by tablets. They're all the medication, how much a person is supposed to take on milligrams of certain pills and stuff. It's all done electronically. Now, what happens if it shuts down? Is there a manual way to do it? Boom, you're offline? No, right. Charles, you're shaking your head. No, there's not. I mean, it's great to have all these three things. I mean, that's great for the pillars to start it. But I think we need to just jump that fence right now and create a manual mechanism to put in place in case everything shuts down. So Esther, I ask that you please look into that, to seek the utilities company, the hospital, and maybe a couple private sectors like banking areas, to ask for, if in the event it shuts down, do you have a manual plan in place? And that's really important. So those really three things: utilities, hospital, and banking systems. I think gas companies have found a way to bypass any kind of hacking that way. Maybe not at their main port in like Virginia when it happened in Virginia, when they actually had, what is it, there was hostage, what's that called, Charles, when, you know, if somebody calls in, they have all your data, they're keeping it hostage, and ransomware, that's it, came to me just now, ransomware. So that could happen here on Guam too. So with that being said, I think there's a lot to digest here. Charles, can you send us your testimony too as well? I didn't get a copy of it. You can email it to all the senators if it's more convenient for you to do that. And I thank you again for all the hard work that you're doing and staying on top of it. I know it's scary times these days, you know, and all the possibilities of getting hit. And let's just give Guam some more comfort by finding ways, plans, such like this bill, to make it better, to make it work, not to just shut it down, but to find a way to make it work. You know, I think that would be very helpful, you know. Looking forward to keeping the collaboration going on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Senator Aguigui. My colleague, Senator Roy, sir, would you like to add something?
Hopefully, good morning, colleagues. Good morning, panel, Ms. Estevis and Mr. Aguigui and Mr. Estevis. First and foremost, thank you guys for always doing your best in responding to all of our civil defense needs. I know that we do need more money for everything. Happy New Year to you and the team, and kudos again to the team for responding. It's very easy to criticize, you know, in a time of disaster, and I think in any disaster, it's very easy for us to see the best and the worst of everyone, right? But in any case, disasters are never pleasant, but we also see a lot of great things come through with our community as we build back together and build back better. So I think that's what the intent of this legislation is, and I did have interest in, I believe, Senator Bloss's earlier comments regarding messaging systems. Maybe I did have interest in implementing something with the 911 center to streamline synchronization of like Docomo, iConnect, whatever telecoms are out there. We do certainly need to find the funding source or add it to the billing cycle, because we already have implementation of the dollar E911 fee that funds the 911 service, right? But I understand that funding is not enough for the operations of E911. So we do, I think it's like we match it, the government matches it to cover the shortfall with the fire department. So I think we need to find a way to advance our public notice and public services announcements. I've also stressed this with Public Works. Also with GPD, we're not in the position where you can travel from one state to another, but we are in a position where we can travel from one island to another, right? So unfortunately in the CNMI, there was an incident where a girl was kidnapped and no one knew about it for like 24 hours. And I think if we can have a system that can, you know, push out a public service announcement, so-and-so last seen at this point or whatnot, right? And then it was seen with a yellow car, blue car, whatnot. As much information we can get out to the community to help us and find the perpetrator, right? Unfortunately, also with the 2-month shooting, it could probably help, and we need to find other alternatives to try to streamline the advance notice for all of these systems, especially with the tsunami. We've been having a little bit issues with the air raid or air sirens. I don't know what they're called, but you know, also I think we also need to look into the possibility that of, you know, we don't really like the commentary of war, but infrastructure that is most critical is the power, and a lot of our power systems are all very easy to disconnect, right? They can just press the keyboard and it can disconnect the customer. So I'm almost certain that we can have some ransom issues or have possible threats of major hacking, and then we lose the entire power grid, because, you know, the advancement of technology also comes with some hazardous technology issues, right? So I guess we really need to look into someone that can help us guide and navigate through this electronic warfare, unfortunately, and we can figure out how to protect ourselves. It's very important for us to look into that. Other than that, Mr. Chair, I don't have anything further.
Thank you, Senator Kanata. Before we close, I'd like to invite my colleague again to offer his closing.
No,
Senator
thank you.
Blas.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, and for my colleagues that are here today. Thank you as well for their not their questions as well as their thoughts on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Estevis, Ms. Aggie. Thank you very much. I think that I agree. Emergency management, like laws, there needs to be the ability for fluidity and flexibility. I assure you that what this bill intends doesn't negate that or doesn't restrict that from you. What this bill basically just requires is that we have a plan that is updated and is reviewed more than just periodically. It doesn't require that every time you update or you change the bill, the plan, that you have to bring it in here for concurrence and for approval. That's not our job. That's yours. What we want to do is give you the tools, but then also the fire to be able to do this. This bill does not dilute the power of the ultimate authority in disasters, in emergencies, the governor. That's not our job. Our job is to provide you the tools necessary so that you can carry out these plans, carry out these activities. That's what it's for. Okay. I wanted to end by also, there's a couple things, and I apologize for the sake of time and everything, and I didn't want to bore everybody about going through all 30 responsibilities that whether it be Guam Homeland Security, Office of Defense. Quite interesting is that even in your own emergency management plan, it's written out that way. Guam Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense. So if you want to talk about who's got what responsibility, if you reviewed your plans, you would have seen that too as well. That you yourself brought out who this cloud that may exist in as far as who's responsible. I didn't. You did. So there was a couple things that I want to ask. Item number 15 in what your role and responsibilities are, whether it be Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense, is providing standards and requirements for village emergency management plans. This is the assumption that this is the village mayors. The standards and requirements ensure that village plans are coordinated and consistent with the Guam CEMP. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you met with the mayors and you asked them about their emergency management plans? Not about how they're going to react to a disaster, what their plans are. Okay?
Senator, the last time I communicated with the mayor on an emergency management plan, what they were going to do about it was the week after the typhoon, when Mayor Rivera from Tamuning had actually asked if I could please send her a plan of our emergency management plan. And in that plan, there's actually a section for the mayors.
Yeah, so that was a week after, so that's right around the last week of May, so right maybe around the 28th, 29th of May, something like that, or early part of June, right, of 2023. I'm reading off of a December 2016 report, a mandate that you were supposed to do. And we waited until June of 2023. Next, number 23. Reviewing per an established schedule, emergency operating procedures of Guam agencies and recommending revisions to ensure consistency with the CEMP. When's the last time you did that with the agencies?
So normally we have a quarterly meeting with agency, what we call response activity coordinators. And it's from there they would basically state within the emergency support functions the different SOPs they have and then the changes they make to it. So we haven't had I just came back in June. Esther just came in June as well. So it's something that we have not done in the past quarter, but it's something that we have planned for 2024.
Okay.
To resume our quarterly meetings.
Charles, Mr. Estevis, some of the reports that I got back from the agencies, okay, their plan was last updated in 2012. They gave me a 2012 document. It was so old that when they photocopied it, they still had the cobwebs on it. Okay? Okay? So there. Number 30. Ensures the continuity of government and assists with the planning of continuity of operations efforts for the government of Guam agencies and services. I'm going to ask you, I'll tell you. That based on the September 11 request, more than half the agencies did not have a continuity of government or a continuity of operations plan. Agencies didn't know where they were going to go to should their buildings become uninhabitable, unoccupiable. No call tree existed for who was going to be, or command structure existed for who was going to be in command. Hence why I push for this. Granted, Ms. Aguigui and Mr. Estevis, it's going to light a fire under you. But you know what? I would rather that the fire is lit and it stays burning, and that we know that no matter who's in the operation, no matter who's in charge, no matter what kind of emergency, what type of emergency, and no matter who the governor is, okay, we're not in the dark. That's what this is for. Okay? So please don't read into that. Well, every time we make a plan, we change the plan, we're going to have to come in and get approval. No, that's not what this calls for. It just says you have a plan. And if you need to approve it, you need to improve it, you need to delete it, you need to enhance it, that's your job. But if you need help from us, come to us so we can do our job. So with that, thank you very much for being here. Again, while you say you were opposed to it, thank you for basically providing testimony that says all the reasons why we need it. And I took it off of your plan, which I want to end by saying this, showing this. This is the front of your plan, right? Here, I mean there, so the public can see it. This is the front of your plan. And then it goes to what's in the plan. And interestingly enough, it's got a page here for a record of changes. Nothing. What does that tell me, and what does that tell this community of just how up to date we are with our plans? That's what this bill is going to make sure happens. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. You know, when I was a child, the lady up the street, Manamko Dansepa, she gave me a rooster. It was one of those Rhode Island red roosters. You know, they're very big. Looks like it's going to win in a cockfight. So I told my dad, I said, Dad, can we go to bring this? I was probably like only 8 years old, and my dad told me, he goes, boy, mga sa ginon sotay gat mo, sempre malago, sa matsat gihid na dos. he's gonna, once I let my chicken go, he's gonna run away and they're gonna laugh at us. And it reminds me of, we got to be prepared. We got to bring the right, I guess, the right rooster to the fight. It's not only because he's big that he's going to win, but you got to constantly train them. And so it's not that I'm advocating cockfighting. It's just it kind of like runs together with this bill, and I understand and I appreciate my colleagues' bill and authoring it. And I think that 2012 action plan is so good that maybe that's why they kept it in place and never changed it. But with all jokes aside, it's very important that we constantly update it and revise it, and also doing it understanding the threats that lie before us, that possibly lie before us. But I thank you, Madam Esther Aguigui and Charles Estevis, Mr. Estevis, for coming here and offering your testimony. I really do appreciate it. And with that, if there's nothing further, I guess we'll close. With that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for attending the hearing. There's no more testimony here today. Please note that we also continue to receive testimony via mailroom, the Guam Legislature, or through email at Senator Nicolas at guamlegislature.org. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And with no further testimony, the committee is now adjourned. Sizuas Maasi, the time is now 10:33. Thank you. Love your manamkos, love your parks. Be safe and take care, everybody. Thank you.